Inside the paddock, the speculation has reached a fever pitch. Some believe this is Hamilton's final masterstroke, one last title, with the very team that symbolized his biggest rivalry. Others believe it's a suicide mission, an impossible bid to wrestle control from Max Verstappen in a team built entirely around him. But everyone agrees, if Lewis signs that contract on May 22nd, nothing in Formula One will ever be the same again. Subscribe just to stay tuned for the Formula One news no one else explains to you. Lewis Hamilton's recent covert journey to Austria has ignited a whirlwind of speculation, disbelief, and astonishment across the paddock and beyond. What seemed like a quiet moment in the championship calendar has erupted into one of the most explosive and era-defining stories the sport has ever seen. No one in the paddock, not even the most seasoned journalists or the best-informed insiders, had the slightest clue about the existence of the discreet Red Bull satellite office near Salzburg, a hidden facility, shrouded in secrecy, used only for ultra-sensitive meetings. And yet, under the thick veil of silence, in a location designed to keep even the nosiest media at bay, Lewis Hamilton, the most decorated driver in Formula One history, held a 5-hour meeting that could permanently rewrite the competitive landscape of the sport. This was not just another negotiation. It wasn't a feeler meeting. This was decisive, structured, and intensely confidential. It was the kind of meeting where every participant knew the magnitude of what was unfolding. According to sources with direct knowledge of the situation, Lewis Hamilton, Helmut Marko, Christian Horner, and a hand-picked legal team from Red Bull GmbH spent hours dissecting a contract that is said to be unparalleled in the history of the sport, not only in financial terms, but in strategic depth and long-term vision. The deal that's expected to be inked on May 22nd is not just about dollars and podiums. It's about legacy, power, and rewriting the formula of what it means to be a driver in the modern era. While the numbers are staggering, more than $70 million a year in salary alone, eclipsing any existing deal in Formula One, the truly disruptive elements lie elsewhere. This is not simply a driver contract. It's a strategic alliance. Hamilton will reportedly be granted unprecedented influence over the development direction of Red Bull's 2026 car, aligning with a new era of power unit regulations. This clause, rare to the point of being unheard of, gives Hamilton a voice not just in how the car behaves but in how the entire organization prepares for the next leap forward. He's not being hired to race a car, he's being positioned to help build it from the DNA up. And beyond that, buried in the fine print, there are quiet but revolutionary whispers of post-racing involvement with Red Bull Advanced Technologies, an invitation for Hamilton to expand his influence into the next generation of engineering, innovation, and perhaps even mobility itself. The moment Toto Wolff caught wind of Hamilton's unannounced flight to Austria, the Mercedes principal's initial reaction was disbelief. Not panic. Not anger. Just disbelief. He believed it was posturing, just another high-stakes tactic in the psychological chess game of contract extensions. But as the hours ticked by and verification came in from Red Bull contacts, Toto's mood shifted dramatically. From measured skepticism to frantic concern. He reached for his phone. Once. No answer. Twice. Still nothing. A third call. Silence. It wasn't until the fourth attempt that Hamilton picked up, and the conversation that followed was less a discussion and more a moment of reckoning between two men whose professional lives had been inextricably linked for over a decade. According to sources who were briefed on the call, it began with silence. A long pause. Then Toto asked the question that's now echoing throughout the Mercedes compound. After everything we built, this is how it ends? The weight of the years, the championships, the shared victories and controversies hung heavy in his voice. But Hamilton, calm, composed, and unswervingly resolute, delivered a line that might very well become the epitaph of the Mercedes-Hamilton era. I gave you everything. I asked for change, for vision, and all I got were promises. They acted. Red Bull acted. You didn't. It was a gut punch. A rare moment of total candor. Wolff pushed back, reminding Lewis of their dominance, their records, their 8 Constructors' Championships, their unparalleled synergy. But the words didn't land the way they once did. Hamilton, speaking not as a driver but as a man on a mission, responded with a line that no one in Mercedes will forget: legacy is not static. I need to keep writing it. And Mercedes right now isn't the pen I want to use. The emotional gravity of that exchange cannot be overstated. This wasn't about salary. It wasn't about ego. It was about purpose. Hamilton sees something in Red Bull that Mercedes is no longer offering: a chance to shape the future, not just react to it. And Red Bull, in a move that's both shocking and visionary, is willing to hand him the keys not only to the car but to the house itself. Back at Brackley, the fallout was immediate. The engineers, stunned. The PR team, scrambling. Drivers, both current and reserve, whispering in hushed tones in the corridors. Even George Russell was reportedly caught off guard. His future, once clear as the heir apparent, is now clouded by the monumental shadow Hamilton's exit will leave. Some in the team see betrayal. Others see ambition. But no one sees indifference. Hamilton's move has detonated a shockwave that will ripple for years. At Red Bull, the mood is controlled chaos. Elation laced with strategic planning. They know what they're getting, not just a 7-time champion, but a global icon, a cultural leader, and a racer who still believes he has unfinished business. The paddock may not believe it yet, but the wheels are already turning. The deal is nearly done. May 22nd may go down as the single most consequential date in the hybrid era of Formula One. Because if Hamilton truly dons the Red Bull overalls, if he walks into that garage not as a rival but as a warrior with a new cause, the 2026 season won't just be the start of a new era. It'll be the start of a war. A war not just for titles, but for legacy, control, and the soul of the sport itself. Even more stunning than the initial report itself was Charles Leclerc's immediate, unfiltered reaction to the news. It didn't come during a press conference or a public interview. It came behind closed doors, in a private debrief at his apartment in Monaco. Only a few trusted members of his entourage were present. According to one source who was in the room, Leclerc's face drained of color the moment the name Hamilton was mentioned alongside Red Bull. He stopped mid-sentence, dropped the tablet he was holding, and muttered, "You're joking, right? Hamilton?" to Red Bull, over and over again, as if saying it aloud would somehow make it less real. The silence in the room was heavy. He stood there, blinking, stunned, almost disconnected from the conversation around him. After a long pause, he turned to his performance coach and said in a hushed tone, "That changes everything. Max won't have the same team anymore. That's war inside Red Bull." The words weren't theatrical. They were raw. It wasn't fear, but it was close. What followed hours later wasn't something Leclerc had planned, but it happened anyway. Alone in his living room, still trying to process the gravity of the news, Charles opened his phone and dialed a name he hadn't called directly in months: Lewis Hamilton. It started as a casual gesture, a check-in, maybe even a subconscious attempt to confirm the news with the man himself. But the moment Hamilton's face appeared on screen, calm and collected, the conversation instantly turned. "You know what you're walking into?" Charles asked, his voice clipped with urgency. "You think you can coexist with Max in that environment? Do you even realize what you're stepping into? Christian will protect him like always. That team was built around Max." Lewis didn't blink. In fact, he smiled. It wasn't arrogance, it was a quiet, burning confidence. "I'm not walking in to coexist," he said smoothly. "I'm walking in to lead. I've done it before. I'll do it again." The pause that followed was palpable. Charles leaned back, eyes narrowing, the flicker of disbelief still lingering. "This isn't like Mercedes," he said finally. "Red Bull isn't structured for anyone else to win. You think you'll change that overnight?" Lewis shrugged. "I don't need to change the structure. I just need to be faster." Meanwhile, across the continent in Maranello, the atmosphere at Ferrari HQ turned icy. Frederic Vasseur had heard whispers, everyone in the paddock had, but the confirmation hit him like a gut punch. He wasn't just disappointed. He was furious. For 2 years, in quiet back-channel conversations, he had kept the door ajar for Hamilton. He had floated the idea discreetly, reaching out through intermediaries, carefully positioning Ferrari as a noble final chapter for the 7-time world champion. The plan was never public, but it was real. Now, that plan lay in ruins. That night, over a private dinner with his top engineers at a small trattoria in Maranello, Vasseur didn't hide his frustration. He raised his glass, gave a hollow toast, and then put it down with a thud. "If Red Bull gets Hamilton and keeps Max," he said with unmistakable gravity, "we're all racing for third. That's not speculation. That's math." The table fell silent. Everyone knew what it meant. There was no margin for patience anymore. No more 5-year plans. No more careful driver grooming. The era of gentle progression was over. It was time to act. And fast. Later that evening, Vasseur drafted a message to John Elkann, Ferrari's chairman and one of the few men with the authority to authorize sweeping immediate changes. The subject line of the message was reportedly just 2 words, now or never. The content was more explosive. He demanded an urgent in-person meeting the next morning to discuss what he termed escalated recruitment strategies and accelerated driver development. In other words, a war chest. Sources close to the situation say Ferrari is already in direct contact with Lando Norris's management team. Not just to gauge interest, but to explore a full extraction from his McLaren contract, even if it means invoking rarely used clauses or paying a colossal buyout. The objective isn't simply to improve Ferrari's future, it's to shake the foundation of its competitors now. But that's not the only option on the table. One idea, shocking in its ambition but very real, is an overture to Sebastian Vettel. Yes, Vettel. The 4-time world champion who left Ferrari in 2020 and retired from F1 in 2022. According to an insider, Vasseur floated the idea in a private meeting with Elkann, a short-term high-impact return. A psychological blow to Red Bull and Mercedes alike. It wouldn't just be about performance, it would be about symbolism. About legacy. About showing the world that Ferrari is willing to risk everything to claw back dominance. Inside the Scuderia, the mood has shifted from optimistic to militant. Engineers, strategists, even marketing teams have been put on high alert. A campaign is already being drawn up to frame Ferrari's next move as not just a reaction, but a declaration. The phrase being whispered in internal meetings? Revenge Red. The idea is simple. Hamilton going to Red Bull is a betrayal not of Ferrari, but of balance in the sport. And Ferrari intends to correct that imbalance, whatever the cost. Back in Monaco, Leclerc hasn't spoken publicly. But those close to him say he's already adjusted his training regime. More intensity. Longer simulator sessions. No distractions. Not because he's afraid of Red Bull's new power structure, but because he knows that for the first time in years, the odds have tilted violently. Not just against Ferrari, but against him personally. And that realization has lit a fire he hasn't felt since his F2 days. Hamilton, meanwhile, remains unbothered. As always, he seems to thrive amid chaos. And if the chaos now resides in Milton Keynes, then so will he. But there's one truth that hangs over all of this. Red Bull has never had 2 alphas under one roof. And they're about to learn what that really means. As chaos erupted across the Formula One world, insiders, fans, and journalists alike found themselves trapped in a storm of confusion, speculation, and raw disbelief. What had begun as an ordinary Monday spiraled into one of the most cryptic, tension-filled days the sport had seen in years. Red Bull Racing, typically known for its brash confidence and unapologetic dominance, had suddenly gone mute. Not a whisper from Christian Horner, not a single cryptic quote from Helmut Marko, just complete, impenetrable silence. No clarifying statement. No denial. No deflection. Only the kind of stillness that makes your heart race faster, because in F1, silence is never just silence, it's a warning shot. Their social media blackout wasn't just a PR tactic, it was a move that shook the core of digital fan culture. For nearly 6 hours, Red Bull Racing's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook profiles were eerily inactive. No memes. No posts. No replies. And then just as suddenly, they re-emerged, not with a flashy video or triumphant graphic, but with a single haunting image. A photo of an empty racing seat inside the Red Bull Racing HQ. No driver. No helmet. No explanation. Just a timestamp, May 22, 25. That was all it took. The comment sections exploded in real time. Reddit threads multiplied by the minute. F1 Twitter went into full meltdown mode. Was it a cryptic farewell? A warning? Or perhaps an arrival? The rumors had been whispering through the paddock for weeks, but nothing this bold, nothing this loud without even saying a word. Could it be Lewis Hamilton? Could the 7-time world champion, an icon so tightly woven into the fabric of Mercedes, really be crossing over to Red Bull? The idea had always seemed like fiction. And yet, here was reality, folding in on itself. Journalists scrambled for confirmation, sending 1,000 emails and WhatsApps that all came back with one hauntingly consistent reply: no comment. Mercedes PR personnel were reportedly blindsided. Their phones rang endlessly. When cornered outside the Brackley factory, a junior Mercedes engineer reportedly muttered, "I don't know what's going on." Nobody does. But Toto hasn't smiled all morning. That single line, posted by a motorsports blogger on X, formerly Twitter, garnered over 3 million views within 2 hours. Meanwhile, somewhere above the clouds, Lewis Hamilton was in the air. Last seen at a private hangar in Salzburg, he was captured in a grainy video clip, dressed head to toe in black, headphones on, and head down, walking past a wall of paparazzi as if they didn't exist. His phone, however, spoke volumes. A fan managed to zoom in just enough to catch a glimpse of his lock screen. It wasn't a photo of Roscoe, or a motivational quote, or even something abstract. It was Red Bull. A sleek, stylized wallpaper with the unmistakable red and blue tones of the energy drink giant's livery. Was it intentional? Was it planted? Was Hamilton sending a signal, or was he just letting the chaos burn? Speculation mutated into obsession. Forums lit up with theories. Some said it was a coup, Hamilton defecting in secret, blindsiding Mercedes and aligning himself with Max Verstappen's kingdom. Others claimed it was revenge, a poetic arc to a rivalry that had once torn the sport apart. Many fans suggested the post wasn't about Hamilton at all, but about Verstappen, and that the empty seat wasn't a vacancy for Hamilton, but a vacancy caused by him. That theory too gained traction fast, particularly after Verstappen's father, Jos, was spotted leaving the paddock early during the Miami Grand Prix weekend, visibly upset. At the time, no one thought much of it. Now, everything was being re-evaluated under a microscope. At the heart of it all sat that one date, May 22, 25. A Thursday. Not a race weekend. Not a launch day. A random Thursday. Or so it seemed. Some fans quickly noticed that the date coincided with the 10-year anniversary of Hamilton's second Monaco Grand Prix win, a race that many argue marked the true beginning of his dominance in a hybrid era. Coincidence? Maybe. But in a sport where timing is everything and symbolism never happens by accident, fans were unwilling to dismiss it so quickly. As night fell, the uncertainty only grew thicker. Sky Sports aired a last-minute special report, with Ted Kravitz pacing anxiously through the paddock, practically begging for answers from anyone who would listen. "Look, I don't want to speculate, but something is happening," he said, more to himself than the camera. "And whatever it is, it's big." Meanwhile, ESPN F1's live YouTube chat topped 120,000 viewers concurrently, most of them typing frantically in all caps. The top comment read, "If Lewis joins Red Bull, I'm losing my mind." Thousands agreed. Sponsors, too, were starting to feel the pressure. Insiders revealed that Puma, who has long backed Hamilton's personal brand, held emergency meetings regarding what a Red Bull deal might mean for ongoing campaigns. Monster Energy, a longtime rival of Red Bull, reportedly pulled 3 planned ads from their pipeline within an hour of the cryptic post. That's the kind of collateral effect only Lewis Hamilton could cause, a commercial tsunami triggered by nothing more than a chair, a date, and a screenshot. And then, just before midnight, a new twist. Max Verstappen was photographed leaving a luxury hotel in Monaco, refusing to answer a single question. His expression? Stone cold. But eagle-eyed fans noticed something strange. He was wearing a pair of sunglasses that Lewis had been spotted wearing just weeks earlier in Tokyo. Were they the same? Probably not. But in the absence of facts, people made stories. And in the world of Formula One, stories are currency. Speculation is oxygen. And when teams go silent, the world screams louder. By the early hours of the morning, a Change.org petition titled, "Tell Us the Truth, Red Bull," had already surpassed 100,000 signatures. TikTok was flooded with fan theories, reaction videos, conspiracy montages, and lip-synced reenactments of Hamilton's potential contract talks. The top trending audio clip? The sound of a Formula One engine revving over dramatic orchestral music, captioned, "Lewis walking into Red Bull HQ like." No confirmation. No denial. No peace. Just that haunting, lonely chair, and a date burned into everyone's minds. Whatever happens on May 22nd, the world of Formula One will never be the same again. The FIA watched in silent discomfort. Though no official statement was released, multiple high-ranking individuals began pushing for reforms around public driver commitments. There was talk of contract transparency thresholds, clauses requiring mutual review periods before exits, and early warning mandates to protect sponsors from sudden reversals. The Hamilton case wasn't just a shock, it was a precedent. A blueprint for chaos. And through it all, Leclerc continued to drift. He arrived earlier and earlier to the paddock, but spoke less and less. When journalists approached, he offered one-word answers or polite deferrals. On team radio, his tone had changed, more clipped, less collaborative. In one race simulation, he reportedly stayed silent through an entire stint, only speaking after shutting the engine off in the garage. When asked if something was wrong, he simply said, "Everything's just very loud right now." At Mercedes, Hamilton's reintroduction was quiet, almost eerie in its smoothness. He returned not with grand speeches, but with methodical precision. He reviewed every technical update since his departure. He sat down with each department individually. He asked about wind tunnel progress, cooling solutions, tire behavior under the new floor regulations. He wasn't demanding dominance. He was reclaiming relevance. And everyone felt it. What happens next isn't just about who finishes first. It's about two teams torn between their past and future, one star forced to lead alone, and another suddenly forced to share. And across every garage, every strategy room, and every briefing, there's a quiet question hanging in the air. What happens when greatness returns to a place that's already moved on? The Brackley corridors hum with forced politeness, but beneath the surface, a silent war has begun. George Russell moves through the facility with the precision of a man trying to contain a flood of frustration beneath a carefully composed exterior. He greets engineers, poses for cameras, nods to the interns, but his mind is elsewhere. Those closest to him say he hasn't slept properly in days. Not since the moment the call came in. Not since he learned, not from his team principal, not from a press release, but through a third-party whisper, that Lewis Hamilton was returning to Mercedes, not next year, not someday, but immediately. And that everything Russell had been building toward was suddenly violently in question. Inside Mercedes, the air has changed. Conversations are sharper. Eye contact is shorter. Trust is being rationed. The garage, once structured around calm efficiency and seamless coordination, is now bracing for friction. Not because of personal animosity, Hamilton and Russell have never been at odds, but because two apex-level competitors cannot share space without tension eventually devouring every inch between them. The simulation teams are already adjusting schedules. Data access protocols are under review. Strategic decisions that once flowed in a clear hierarchy now pass through dual layers of ego, legacy, and ambition. Russell isn't angry at Hamilton. He's angry at the system that fed him promises and now expects him to smile as they're broken in real time. The narrative he was sold was one of transition, the student stepping forward, the heir finally taking the throne. That illusion has been shattered. He's not stepping into leadership, he's being pushed back into the shadows by the man whose portrait still hangs in the lobby. And Hamilton? He returns not as a nostalgic figure or a retired hero giving it one last go. He returns with blood in his mouth. He returns with scars unhealed, stories unfinished, and a vendetta against every assumption that he was done. This is not a comeback. This is a reclamation. Of control. Of identity. Of a seat that was never supposed to be his again, now handed back not with ceremony, but necessity. His deal isn't just a driver contract, it's a declaration of influence. Clauses buried deep in legal frameworks reportedly grant him expanded authority not just on development feedback, but on project prioritization, simulator driver selection, and even input on branding direction. This is a partnership in name only. In practice, it's Hamilton rewriting the hierarchy of power inside the team, shifting Mercedes from an engineering-first empire into a performance dynasty orbiting his singular gravitational pull. Engineers who once managed with spreadsheets and torque maps now find themselves navigating diplomacy, locker room psychology, and legacy management. Meetings that once ended with consensus now drift into quiet standoffs. Strategy sessions require extra buffers, new time blocks added just to navigate the possibility that both drivers disagree on a fundamental tactical approach. The tension is not hostile. It's more dangerous than that. It's respectful, civil, polite. But every moment hums with unspoken rivalry, with the understanding that beneath every sentence, there is an alternative meaning, a veiled power move, a battle for who gets to define the team's direction. Marketing departments are operating in emergency mode. Posters scheduled for launch next month now sit shredded on office floors. Television spots shot weeks ago with Russell as the solo focus have been shelved. New campaign scripts are being rewritten at 3 a.m., entire ad teams working around the clock to recenter the narrative around Hamilton. Global sponsors are demanding clarity. Who leads this team? Who do we invest in? Who represents us when the lights go out and the cameras roll? Behind closed doors, corporate partners are leveraging the moment. Hamilton's return brings exposure, record engagement, unmatched reach, cultural relevance. But it also brings volatility. Some brands are enthusiastic, thrilled to align with the most iconic figure of the hybrid era. Others are wary, concerned about the shifting spotlight and the message it sends about Mercedes' future. The balance is delicate. Every brand wants the glory, none want the mess. The FIA has already adjusted entries for Imola. Admin teams worked overnight to ensure registration data matched the breaking developments. Graphics packages are being remade. Commentary teams are rewriting scripts. Media personnel are being reassigned. The machinery of Formula One, built to anticipate everything, now scrambles in real time to accommodate a development that was never supposed to happen. Not this soon. Not like this. And in the paddock, the psychological impact is seismic. Every team feels it. At Red Bull, internal meetings have shifted tone. Verstappen's camp, usually calm, is now watchful. They remember what it's like to share the stage with Hamilton, not just in performance, but in presence. Helmut Marko has reportedly ordered a review of all team communication protocols, including public statements, radio directives, and narrative management. Not to contain Verstappen, but to counter the inevitable flood of attention Hamilton will bring with him.